Begin the morning by saying to thyself, I shall meet with the busybody, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, and unsocial. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. Um, Welcome to Simple Life Philosophy. I'm your host, Ed Raby. This is the channel where we look at various philosophies of life and try to come up with a simple philosophy that is both easy to understand and easy to execute and is also effective. We take a look at different things like Stoicism, Essentialism, Minimalism, pagan philosophies, advice, sage advice, life, relationships, whatever, and try to break it down into something that will give us a very simple, direct focus that is effective. Today, I want to talk about how you can gain some positive benefits from negative thinking. I just read a quote from Marcus Aurelius. It's from book 2, chapter, second book of his book Meditations, and the first paragraph and the first line of that paragraph, that you begin every day with an understanding that you're going to meet negative people. Now, I find this hilarious because our modern world tends to we preach this notion of the power of positive thinking, or the law of attraction, that if you're thinking and desiring positive things, you will eventually bring into that thing. Now, I'm going to tell you straight up, I think that's a load of shit. But a lot of people go about that way, and I think it is far more realistic to do what Marcus Aurelius says to do. Not just in the sense that you're going to meet people that are, busybodies and angry, and, they're trying to do stuff to you that's negative, but also in the sense that you're going to meet situations every day that are not going to be positive. Now, why is it important to have this positive power of negative thinking? Because in negative thinking, you begin to look at the fact that every day is going to be a little bit of a struggle. Stoics embrace the struggle. Okay, the reason they embrace the struggle is they know that develops character in their life. And, it builds character, as some of the things that our parents used to say whenever we were struggling with something or had to face something difficult. The problem is they were probably pretty much correct. Now, Marcus Aurelius goes on in this paragraph, and he kind of summarizes why, you need to do this. He says, number one, you need to understand that most of these people are acting that way because they don't know how to discern good and evil. They have no concept of how to embrace, good and evil and have a clear thinking. So they act in their ignorance. They act in their incompetence because they simply don't know the proper way to live or do things. And if you're a person who is wise and trying to have a very focused philosophy of life, you're going to come into sharp contrast into somebody that doesn't. And I kind of like this idea because he's basically saying, listen, you're going to run across people that they are ignorant, angry, whatever, and make your life difficult because they haven't figured out the wisdom of knowing good and evil. Most of the time, I look at life in somewhat of a realistic tone. I don't really go into the positive confession or any of that stuff. I didn't like that stuff when I was a Christian. It was the name it and claim it and blab it and grab it crowd in Christianity that still exists to this day, by the way. So from my perspective, when looking all of that, I watched a lot of people have this positive outlook on life, and then they just, everything's going to work out so I can just do whatever I want. I have a much more realistic view of life. I'm going to plan, but I am automatically going to assume that something's going to upset my plan. And so therefore I go forward, living my life, understanding that things are going to go sideways from time to time. And I'm going to meet people that are going to be difficult. I work in retail, and so I run into difficult customers. I have coworkers that, do their own thing and don't seem to follow my understanding what needs to be done, or I have bosses that, just having a bad day or whatever. And we all have that in our life somewhere, where people are going to act ignorantly. If we wake up in the morning and we accept that that's the way it's going to be, then we can face the reality of how to deal with them. And the first thing we need to understand is some people are still working on their understanding of good and evil. They're still working on understanding how their attitude or their actions can either bring about good results or negative results. You, as a person who studies philosophy, who is looking for that simple life philosophy, needs to be asking the question, how do I go forward? How do I get past all this? And Marcus Aurelius gives us another answer, which is you need to discern their common humanity. Now, he talks about the divine spark in each one of us, coming from the gods or whatever. I would say that there's probably a better idea of more of a common humanity, that we all are human beings. I think the greatest challenge to living a life of character in our dealings with other people is recognizing our humanity, our own humanity in other people. A long time ago, I read a book called Leadership and Self-Deception. It's by the Arbinger Institute, and I think it's still out there. And they focused on this very idea that the reason why we begin to have interpersonal problems is we begin to look at another person not as a person, but as a problem, as an obstacle to our own happiness. And then we begin to view them more negatively than they really are, and view ourselves more positively than we really are. And the more we start to strip each other of our humanity towards each other, we begin to make the situation worse. Okay, once you begin to see the humanity of the other person, even if they're acting in an ignorant or angry manner, the moment you begin to diffuse that situation and go forward with a much more positive aspect of life. But notice that even this philosophy, that leadership and self-deception brings, starts with a negative understanding of, we got a problem, okay? And when you can acknowledge that you have a problem, then you can go forward. And I think this is the idea of gaining some sort of positive outcome from thinking negatively, of understanding the reality that negative things are going to happen to you. And so what is your plan for that when it happens? What is going to be your attitude? When it's people, are you going to treat them still like people? It is always a challenge because, I have people in my life who I don't really want to meet. I have some people, including a couple, that I hope I never meet again because I know that that's going to be a very difficult situation for me. At the same time, I also think that those people would probably be the greatest test of whether or not I'm going to live a life according to my character and come up with one of the great Stoic statements is that the best revenge is not to become like the person that harmed you. I think that's a big key. I mean, if you become just like them, then they've won. But if you, on the other hand, act in proper character and don't become like them, then that is the best revenge in the fact that you have become a better person. You've decided to move you forward. Now, we don't want to virtue signal and we don't want to say, yeah, see, I did better than that guy. But at the same time, I think you need to move forward with your life and say, listen, I want to be better than this. And even if this person did do me wrong, even if they acted ignorantly towards me, even if they treated me badly, I still want to rise above that and be the better person. Not so I can get accolades, but because it's good for me and ultimately it's good for the person we're dealing with. I think you diffuse the situation because when this person acts ignorantly towards you, you act ignorantly back and forth, and it just becomes a vicious cycle. The way to break the cycle, the way to get out of the cycle is recognize the humanity of the other person and just kind of acknowledge it and treat them like another person, regardless of how they treat you. And this is a hard thing to do. I have my own struggles with it, okay, because there's a lot of people that sometimes act very ignorantly toward me and have in the past. And the challenge for me at that point is to go, okay, what do I want to be? What is my goal? Okay, am I going to let this person get off of my goal? Am I going to let the negative situation or the negative people get me off my goals and the building of my character? Or am I going to say, you know what, I'm going to still treat this person with respect and kindness Not necessarily because they deserve it, because then it's good for me, it diffuses the situation, it de-escalates the problem, and starts to come up with a solution. And it all starts with understanding that, recognizing that you have the same problem sometimes that those other people have. We all have a problem, and we all need to work better to get over it. I think, as I go through reading some of these classics, I just found it humorous when I read that. I says, this is completely opposite of what a lot of meditations are when you start a day. You need to start, I meditate in the morning and for about 3 or 4 minutes. And it's always been, getting my attitude right, focusing on virtue and focusing on the actions that I need to take, focusing on habits that I need to develop. But also within that maybe is an acknowledgement of, when I walk out of this apartment, I'm going to face the reality of some pretty ignorant and angry people at times. And I've got to decide to rise above that, be a better person of character, and move forward with my life where I'm facing more positive future, because I recognize that negative things and negative people are going to come into my life. And those are the tests to see whether or not I'm going to stay on the path of being a good person. Not because I want accolades, but because it's good for me. Because, otherwise you just get into a fight, you get all worked up, you end up getting angry. And anger, in my opinion, never really accomplishes too much good. So, unless you're angry at the right thing. But the fact is that list is pretty short. So, that's just kind of the thought today as I was reading the meditations. I'm going to continue to read through Marcus Aurelius, and I've got Epictetus on here, and I've got Seneca and his 3 books. And I'm just going to read through it, and when I find something interesting that I see in them, I'm going to talk about it. So it's kind of interesting today that I kind of fell on this quote and realized, there's some positive benefits to negative thinking. All right, well, that's all I have for today. I want to thank you for stopping by. I appreciate every share, like, subscribe, comment. Every time you hit that notification bell to make sure you get the content every time it's released. Everything you do is what builds this channel, and I'm very appreciative of that. Now I just want to say have a great day. This has been Simple Life Philosophy. I've been your host, Ed Raby, and I trust that you'll have a great day and that you'll have an awesome time producing your own simple philosophy of life.